So I just dropped my 11-year-old off at his first day of sixth grade, first day of middle school. And in a minute, I'm going to go drop my 14-year-old off at her first day of ninth grade, first day of high school, which both of these things conspire to make me feel old. Even though I don't feel old, but I feel like old, but not old. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to have a kid in high school and a kid in junior high and to still feel like a kid in a lot of ways, right? Um, I mean, look at my office. I got swords and guitars and video game posters, and I play video games and watch movies and TV for a living. It's weird because I'm thinking back to when I was in sixth grade or ninth grade, and what a different world we live in. You know, both my kids have phones. When I was in sixth grade, when I was in ninth grade, I didn't have a phone. There was no way to get hold of my parents from school and ask them questions. There was no conflict at bedtime that we had to put the phone away because in my household, the kids don't have their phones at night for obvious reasons. There wasn't a global pandemic or a Delta variant when I was in sixth and ninth grade. There wasn't social media. There wasn't, Snapchat and, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all this stuff. I think maybe in a lot of ways, being in middle school or in high school in those days was better. In some ways it was worse, probably too. But I think there was less of a social burden on your shoulders than there is for kids now. And I think this was also a time before, I don't know, before we all got so afraid all the time. This was, when I was in ninth grade, that was what, 96? I graduated in 99, so 95, 96. The 90s were sort of a freewheeling time. People were pretty excited. I mean, we just had Pulp Fiction release early in the 90s, and then, TV was probably worse overall. We didn't have, Breaking Bad and all that. We didn't have Game of Thrones. We didn't have Lost, but we had great movies. And pre 9/11, pre Columbine was just a different era. People were not as afraid all the time. And I swear to God, over the last, pretty much the 21st century has been a century of fear. And it's interesting and it's weird because in a lot of ways, the 21st century is a lot less horrifying than the 20th century. In the 20th century, we had the Holocaust, two world wars, Vietnam, Korea, the rise of communist China and the USSR and the fall of the USSR. And we had, the Rwandan genocide and so many other horrible things happened in the 20th century. But in the 21st century, there's this sense of trade-offs all the time. So 9/11 happens and we get the Patriot Act, we get the TSA, we get all these overbearing security, compromises. We're going to sacrifice some of our freedom for this added extra security or sense of security. We're going to go into at least two or three or four foolish wars. I'd say Iraq being the most expensive and ludicrous of the bunch, but Afghanistan close behind, and then also Libya and Syria to lesser degrees, but still wrong-headed, expensive, and bloody wars, all to protect this sense of security and freedom. But really, we trade our freedoms when we go off to pointless wars, when we enact pointless legislation. And I'm very much on the freedom side of things. I know we need to have security. I mean, every country does. We'd be foolish not to. But I've long maintained that the way to handle terrorists in Afghanistan is via, international policing, anti-terrorism work, not war. War is and then you can see that the Taliban is just taking over city after city in Afghanistan now. It was a pointless adventure. So, I think we still could have gotten Bin Laden via counterterrorism measures rather than war, right? So, which all brings me to this question of the pandemic and masks and mask mandates and anti-mask mandates here in Arizona, Doug Ducey has mandated that no public schools can mandate masks. He is anti-mandated. But I am of the mind that local communities should decide for themselves, right? Democracy gets less and less wieldy and less precise the further out you get, right? So at a local level, at a very local level, you can elect these officials to your school board, and then they can make the decisions based on what the local community's values are. On the other hand, of course, since local government gets far less scrutiny than federal government, there is always the risk that a lot of local government shenanigans are going to get glossed over, or there's a reason why local corruption can sometimes be worse than at the federal level, where there's much more scrutiny. However, in a situation like this, I do think that local communities should be allowed to decide what they want for themselves. So if your community doesn't want to have masks in their schools, that should be up to them. If my community does, that should be up to us. And last night, the night before school started, the school board did vote to mandate masks in all public schools, inside, not outside, which is good. I don't think you should have to wear masks outside, but against the governor's orders. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, the fallout of that. But just like I think the federal government has no business telling states whether or not they should mandate masks in state buildings, I don't think the state should have any business mandating what local governments, city governments, school boards, whatever, can do. And you may say, well, then we have to go to the individual level. How can we mandate a mask to individuals from the local level? Well, I guess I just view masks like a dress code, and I don't know why that's controversial, really. I think you can mandate that people wear shirts and shoes to school. You can mandate that during the crisis time we wear masks. Now, you may quibble with this. You may say, well, masks don't help. I think personally that the science is fairly undecided on a lot of things right now. There's the nature of the vaccines, the nature of the virus itself, the variants, what prevents, what helps. I know there's a lot to this. It's very complicated. And, I think all these sort of alternative treatments that people have talked about that have been sort of sidelined or swept under the rug, I think those should be pursued. I think masks, my personal view is it's very pragmatic. I think better safe than sorry. I think that that overall there is a correlation between mask wearing and cases slowing down. I mean, there's a reason why, like every nurse, including my girlfriend who is a nurse, wears a mask at the hospital. Even outside of COVID times, you would wear a mask in a lot of situations, not all day, but I think better safe than sorry is a reasonable approach. But then you have to ask, okay, well, what about the Patriot Act? What about these anti-terrorism measures? What about this idea of safety versus freedom? Is it better safe than sorry, or is it better free? I don't know that it's like a black and white issue here. I think that every different situation calls for a different answer, and I'm still, I guess I beg in ignorance in a lot of ways. We are still, this is all so new still. I certainly don't think anyone wants to have masks in perpetuity, forever. I can't talk this morning. I'm tired. We get up early to go to school, and it sucks. I don't think that the virus, the politics of the virus can last forever. I want them to go away. I think most people do. I think there's a sense that some people want to just control you with all this stuff, and I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think some people do. I think there is a contingent of people who want to sort of push the fear-mongering as far as they can, and I think that's silly. But I also know someone who was close to the family who died from coronavirus and from COVID-19. And, I worry about my youngest child who has some mild respiratory issues. So this is a tough one. I think anyone who comes at you with like certainty, who says, I have all the answers, whether that's that masks don't work or the virus is a hoax or the vaccine is government control, or whether they say this is the magic bullet, this will save everything. I don't think anyone really knows. And I think we need to walk into this with an open mind and hopefully work together. I think that's the biggest thing. So we work together. This is sort of like we're all in it together. Everyone's in it together. Everyone is facing the same sort of horrible, soul-crushing bullshit right now. So anyways, I probably should go because I have to take my 9th grader to her first day of school in 9th grade. which, oh, okay. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think, and let's have a civil conversation, shall we? All right. Peace.